people, but you don't want to build the tool, the device that can enslave and destroy. Do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, through history, through the beginning of time, we've been learning that power is the ultimate achievement. No matter how the power comes, no matter how you use it. If you're in power, no matter how it is, negative, positive, indifferent, stoic, nothing. But if you feel you have power, and whatever way you use that feeling to give you the power you have, whether it be tyranny, wars, I mean, the greatest oxymoron of them all is holy war, which is not in God's plan. The poor people of the Middle East, the Islams and the Muslims, and the Arabs and the Taliban, the Afghanistans, the Pakistanis, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, Israel, Palestine, they all have a purpose on this earth, but they're not using the purpose God gave them to use. They're using the fear that they have by not using God's purpose.
Traveling around the United States, do you see the mentality, the militarization of police intensifying? Do you see it getting worse, or is the vibe getting worse?
Well, yeah, I would say so. Even since September 11, I just think overall all authority has stepped it up a notch.
Douglas MacArthur, another general who cannot be accused of being soft. He said in 1957 to the American people, beware of your government exaggerating foreign threats in order to expand military budgets.
We're talking about $3 trillion in oil in Afghanistan, $4 trillion in Iraq, hundreds of billions of dollars in weapons sales and occupation cost. And Dick Cheney hasn't even allowed bids to be taken. Halliburton and Bechtel and a handful of other corporations that put Bush in office have made all the profits.
Our sitting vice president taking a paycheck, I can't even believe I'm saying this, taking a paycheck from the American people while at the very same time taking one from a corporation that gets billions and billions of dollars in no bid sole source contracts should make us all outraged, and the vice president should blush. But these people don't blush because in the end, they know they can get away with it.
It's about setting the precedent to mobilize the people behind this global war for what PNAC, the president's own organization, says is a war for global domination and setting up a domestic police state, getting rid of posse comitatus, putting troops on the streets, getting Patriot Act 1 passed, trying to pass Patriot Act 2. Okay, type in Project for a New American Century. That's where Dick Cheney, 2 years before Bush got elected, said we need terror attacks to scare the people into submission so we can get the oil. Saddam's not a threat. It's all about using that as a military base. Type in Operation Northwoods. It's on my website, but you'll go to Library of Congress. The official U.S. government plan to carry out 9/11. It is declassified. ABC News, Baltimore Sun. Official U.S. government plan to carry out 9/11. Mayor Willie Brown of San Francisco getting a call from the White House, being told the night of September 10th not to fly to New York that morning. And then Condoleezza Rice and all the rest of them get up there on TV with the kingpin, Richard Armitage, and Colin Liar Powell, and tell you they never had any prior knowledge. They're a pack of liars. And they're getting power out of these attacks that they helped engineer with their business partner, Osama bin Laden. And don't worry, his stage capture is coming up.
Some people think that the response to 9/11, to that act of war that was committed against us, to the people who tried to decapitate us on that day and shut down our financial system, that the response to that ought to be limited war. We'll win in Afghanistan, we'll kill bin Laden, and we'll return to defensive position. This president believes that it's a broad war, that you not only have to deal with Afghanistan, but you've got to deal with the circumstances in the Middle East that have created Al-Qaeda, created the ideologies of hatred that are driving them, that you've got to have a peaceful and stable Iraq as a linchpin of a different kind of Middle East.
People need to understand this administration lied to the nation about 9/11. They lied about Iraq in 9/11. They lied insisting Iraq worked with Al-Qaeda in 9/11. They lied about saying there were weapons of mass destruction. They lied in order to justify an attack on Iraq. Their ulterior motives were very transparent. They were looking to control the oil, to be able to give contracts out, to be in a position where they could dominate the politics of the region and use that as a platform to control other nations in the region. I mean, the whole thing is unmasked, but the American people love their country, they're ready for the truth, and we shall take the truth forward. You shall know the truth shall set you free.
It's very important to consciously connect the dots and focus in on one of the central issues. Bush has given all these speeches. You're either with us or against us.
Either with us or against us. You're either evil or you're good.
All of this is happening, and they're saying we're going to arrest anybody who's got any connections to the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Then you've got the U.S. government flying 8,000 of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, the cream, out to Pakistan. You've got the U.S. government founding the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in 1979, building them up to the 1980s for the war against the Soviets. And then Bush is giving all these speeches about how we've got to go after anybody who has connections to bin Laden. No one has connections to the bin Laden family like the Bushes and to Osama himself. In fact, Osama bin Laden was an admitted CIA asset, and we believe still is, and his code name, admittedly, was Tim Osman. In the 1970s, he was in the U.S. with a short hair and no beard. There's been photos out there of him driving around in his Cadillac, hanging out with the CIA. His older brother founded Arbusto Oil with George W. Bush, his first big contract out of college in 1976 in Midland, Texas, while they owned an airport together in Houston. But again, the media, there's been a few articles, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, BBC, but that's it, folks. So we need to look at the motive, we need to look at the history, we need to look at how the president is intimately involved with the bin Ladens. In fact, we've got FBI agents who were ordered by Bush under W199I, a presidential order several months before 9/11, to back off the bin Laden family, to back off Al-Qaeda in this country. He threatened, Bush did, to arrest FBI agents if they stopped Al-Qaeda. They knew specifically what the hijacking plans were. In fact, FBI agent Robert Wright with David Shippers, the man that impeached Bill Clinton, and Larry Klayman of Judicial Watch gave a press conference last year before the National Press Club, and they said, here's the letter from the Justice Department. We'll be arrested if we tell you what we know about the Bushes and the bin Ladens. But Larry Klayman said this: all I can tell you is the Bushes vacation with the bin Ladens. Bush has taken over the media. In fact, that's one of the offices that some of his people are involved in. Media and Bush merging together, and I'm glad to see a lot of the media is starting to resist that. This is
Dude, are you on crack? The media is owned by the same corporations that own Bush.
That put him in
They're
power.
all owned by the same people.
And Karl Rove, the head White House guy, has been going around saying, don't put out anything that criticizes the government. Work with us.
Absolutely
and they're involved
untrue.
in
totally that is absolutely untrue. I was in both of those meetings.
Sir, I read his quote.
I was in both.
There was quote. Come on now.
I saw the meeting.
Dad, don't fight.
I was there. I saw it on C-SPAN. One of the biggest holes in their argument is the fact that they never heard of a plan to fly hijacked jets into landmarks on the East Coast.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at another example of where, despite the conventional wisdom, there were people in the United States who actually were preparing to defend against the kind of attacks which occurred here on 9/11. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD for short, has been defending the skies over the U.S. and Canada for almost 50 years, 46 to be precise. USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center.
We knew he hated us. But there was nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government, that could envision flying airplanes into buildings on such a massive scale.
But that turns out not to be true. U.S. military planners did envision and practice those very scenarios. As reported by USA Today, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, conducted exercises with fighter jets, simulating hijacked planes flown into the World Trade Center in the 2 years before the attacks.
And so then I saw Condoleezza Rice get up on TV and say, we had never thought, we had never heard. Why, that's a ridiculous conspiracy theory to say that.
Pentagon planners also envisioned the attack on the Pentagon 5 months before it happened. According to this April 2001 Pentagon email, Air Force officials wanted a war game, having a terrorist group hijack a commercial airline and fly it into the Pentagon.
The truth is pouring out in the media. You can hardly keep up with it. It's even coming out on Fox TV. Bill O'Reilly went on national TV to say he was wrong. He was wrong. He admitted he was wrong. That's big of him. Most of these people never admit they were mistaken. But the most telling evidence came from President Bush's favorite and chief arms inspector in Iraq, David Kay, who after spending $500 million of your tax dollars in recent months with 1,500 skilled inspectors, returned home to report to his commander-in-chief, and he said, with further elaboration, he said, quote, "We were wrong," end quote. We were wrong. I remember candidate George W. Bush saying that actions should have consequences, that actions should involve responsibility.
We never engage in a rush to judgment. We study things over time. And I said that I wasn't sure about Ralph Nader in earlier segments of this film, but now I'm even more sure, my friends, that he's a tool to give us the illusion of choice. Not only is one of his former top lawyers and campaign managers a Skull and Bones member, but now we learn that Mr. Nader's book was published by Fox Television, and he's been all over Fox promoting it. Now, again, I'm not saying that, oh, this is some plan to get Bush elected, because we know that Nader takes votes away from Kerry, but it's just an added level of this Byzantine, Machiavellian subterfuge that we should all be conscious of. Mr. Nader, who are you really working for?
The war on terrorism, particularly in its homeland defense manifestation, is a thin cover for the war on dissent.
A lot of prominent individuals have come out against the war. And they're not all what you'd call leftists. Mel Gibson has come out against the Iraq war. He said that it's wrong, that it's unconscionable, that it's a crime, that it's not America's place. And you know, Mel Gibson is just in line with George Washington, who said, don't get involved in foreign entanglements. Don't get involved in imperialism that was the norm at his time in the world, and is still the norm today, just more sophisticated, more veiled.
Power is a gift we have to utilize within ourselves for others in the best way possible. The paradigm of power is the highest standard of power, and that simply is giving.
For 50 years under both parties, our government has been supporting brutal dictators who suppress their workers and their presence. Why don't we have a war on global infectious diseases that are taking millions of innocent lives and are coming to this country in drug-resistant strains?
This is what it's all about, coming out here against tyranny, not as liberals or conservatives, but just as human beings that love freedom and are standing up against the establishment and saying, we are not your slaves!
Throughout history, there's different types of power, and there's powerful people that are powerful because they do good things, and they do it for the right reasons. Why is it, though, really dark, evil, wicked people who are sadistic and enjoy doing bad things to populations, enjoy mutating populations spiritually, physically, financially, why do those type of individuals normally get into power, and then once they have power, no one's challenging them, they increase the murder, the slaughter? How do we stop? Well, number one, why do we see that happen, or do you agree? And then number two, how do we stop that?
A lot of the people who are under the power of the tyrants are like sheep. They know nothing else. They have no role models. This is from generation to generation to generation, and they come with generational curses, and they come from the spirits of evil, and there's 14 of them that are listed in the Bible. And when you have these spirits of evil working with you, within you, around you, and you have the spirits of evil working in the leaders and in the politicians and in the generals, working with them, you have nothing but evil. Nothing but evil. And the most endangered species is dedicated leaders.
I mean, good leaders.
I mean, dedicated leaders in the right way, in the good way.
You have to limit government power and the intrusiveness of government and take away the need for the money that they come after us for.
seeing a lot of lying by the Attorney General. Comments about the new Victory Act, Patriot Act 2, and the lying.
Well, you know, I pointed out in my speech just a little while ago that he had a beautiful quote when he was a senator. I mean, they flip-flop and they deceive. I don't think he would admit that he was doing any lying, but he now serves a different master. He serves the administration, and if they say this is what you're going to do, he goes along with it. So it's just total inconsistency. That's why we need people in government that are willing to stand up for their beliefs and explain what they believe in, and they shouldn't be allowed to stay there, you know, if they flip-flop and just do whatever they feel like doing.
George W. smirks, Dick Cheney sneers, Rumsfeld jokes, Powell blusters, Rice lies, Enron and WorldCom steal, DynCorp vaccinates, Halliburton feeds and feeds and feeds and feeds. Americans hurt, and in Iraq, Americans die. Our national leaders insult our allies, create more foes, reward their friends, increase our insecurity through their own policies, and plunge the American people into the deepest economic abyss of a generation. Stealing an election in Florida on the uncounted Chads, representing the legitimate hopes and aspirations of blacks and Latino Floridians. Even the Democrats failed to pursue a remedy that would permanently secure the voting rights of people of color in Florida and around our country.
Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, who was targeted by her own party as well as the Republicans, was routed out of her popular congressional seat covering Atlanta, Georgia. And when she found out about the United Nations and DynCorp kidnapping hundreds of thousands of women and children and being found guilty in court of doing it, she went public. When she found out about the Bushes and the Bin Ladens and prior knowledge of 9/11, she went public and said, we should have an investigation. When Cynthia McKinney found out about election fraud nationwide being run by elements of the U.S. government, she went public. And she's a real congresswoman. She's the type of person we need.
I tried to warn the American people of the dangers that I saw emanating from this administration. For that, a known black female Republican was advised to run against me in the Democratic primary. Republicans fed her campaign coffers, and then 48,000 of them crossed over and voted for her. Just think about it. Katherine Harris, who participated in the illegal disfranchisement of innocent black and Latino voters, was rewarded with a congressional seat, and I was taken out of one.
So if you're a real Republican who has populist constitutional views, you're targeted. If you're a real Democrat who has real constitutional values and cares about the people, like Cynthia McKinney, you're targeted, you're attacked for getting out of the controlled paradigm. And I'm telling you, the controlled paradigm is the insane worldview.
We see ludicrous leaders like Tom DeLay, Trent Lott, Ward Connolly, and now Arnold Schwarzenegger parade across the stage adorned with the ornaments of power, while thoughtful leaders are shunned or targeted or cruelly maligned. But there was a time when that truly wasn't so. When our leaders challenged the best in us and encouraged us to shun war and invest in justice and peace.
And Cynthia McKinney has been an ardent supporter of the Bill of Rights and has really spoken out against these modern tyrannies. So we have to commend her.
This is absolute gold right here.
Excuse me, y'all gonna
the incredible height
of the property. This is private property.
Okay, where's your property?
15 feet from the foundation.
So you guys done blowing the economy out? Now you're just guarding a little money laundering scam? That's Enron, CIA money laundering. And they don't even want you to videotape their little Enron logo. Can you believe it? The exercise of power. And once our constitutional rights are gone, they'll have these guys dressed up in black uniforms
busting through your door, telling you you're wrong after they're done destroying the entire stock market. That's how the scam's going to work here in the new third world country that is America. See, the media, CNN, all of them told you, invest in Enron, it's the biggest thing, it's the best thing, when really it was a Ponzi scheme. They were consolidating. They were taking all of the assets of the population, the pension funds, putting them in the company, then using those assets to buy other real assets and transferring it into other companies. Then when they're done, they burn the house down and cover up their evidence. And then they have a whitewash in Congress where they talk about issues of little or no significance and distract you off the real facts. Where are the assets? And why aren't people talking about how 2 years ago they started transferring them into real companies? This is what we're dealing with here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the scam. Now let's interview this gentleman. He'll probably know more about Enron than the average corporate executive. And I'm serious when I say that. What exactly do you think's really going on with Enron? You can tell me.
I really couldn't tell you what's going on with Enron. The only thing I can tell you about Enron is that certain people have certain assets in certain places, and they're really not disclosing where their assets at to protect their assets.
Now that's incredible. No one in the media is really talking about where were the assets transferred years before they decided to blow this thing out. It's like, oh, they're all gone, run on the bank. Here it is, again, out of the mouths of babes. He knows exactly what he's talking about. You're on target. I knew we'd get the exact key focused answer we could never get from anybody else.
You got to find the actual employees that was really working here to find out where the target is.
The population thinks that Enron is about a company that went belly up. It was a run on the bank. Couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is it's a giant CIA globalist money laundering operation that I and others were talking about years ago. It's a Ponzi scheme. They take your pension funds, your investment, they buy up power companies, pipelines, you name it, consolidate it, transfer it to other real companies that their interests control. Then they blow out the entire company, have some stage-managed theatrical event whitewashes in Congress, and you buy it. Don't buy it for a single solitary second, because more economic crises are coming. This is how the scam is pulled. Just like 1929 America, I assure you, the stock market is not safe.
I mean, you can buy anything with assets. You can buy anything in H Town.
Exactly, real tangible stuff. They've been transferring, and then they blew the dummy scheme out after the last old lady invested money in it. Their stockbroker said it's the best. CNN says it, and you can trust them. They care when you're.
You can't trust CNN.
I mean, really, it's wrong to even speak out against this CIA money laundering operation.
The neighborhood I grew up in, Boyle Heights in East LA and Los Angeles, police weren't necessarily our friends. I think the experiences we had growing up, that they weren't always there to necessarily help you first. You know, there were situations you'd find yourself in that just seemed unfair. I think that, you know, it has a lot to do with money and the perception that gives people. As people with money are less likely to be aggressive physically than poor people, and I think that stereotype is kind of carried out in a lot of the way.
Well, I would add to that, though, because I've interviewed a lot of police. The establishment also has said that people that fit the stereotype of being poor or disadvantaged are easier to abuse, and then there aren't lawsuits and they don't get in trouble.
Sure, I mean, the legal system, it costs a lot of money to represent yourself. Money does make a difference.
And yes, my friends, there really is an Illuminati. There really are 13 families. They own the big banks that print the money, and they have stated publicly that they plan to get all of us, that's 95 to 80% of us, out of the way to engineer a servant class and to totally take control of the evolutionary development of the human species.
Well, I'm not sure I believe in what you're saying there, Alex. It seems a little far-fetched to me.
All one has to do is investigate FEMA, read the founding documents. It's been around since 1933, though they gave it the name in 1979. And I've got Senate hearings on tape where they talk about the concentration camps that FEMA is involved in constructing and maintaining. In fact, the agencies that were merged to create FEMA were the agencies that actually kept the Japanese Americans during World War II in internment camps. And FEMA's already activated. 4 days after September 11th, President Bush activated 500 dormant clauses, activating all of the FEMA powers. FEMA can take over every radio, television station, every transmission, satellite uplink since '96.
I don't think that FEMA would ever have the power to impose any kind of martial law. That's only can be authorized by an act of Congress. And so I don't really see how the transfer of power would happen unless you're talking about an actual military takeover through the NSC.
Go read the executive orders on FEMA.
How would it happen?
Look, it's already happening. The bunkers are in command right now.
Get out of here. It's where Cheney is.
Look, it's incremental.
Let me tell you something. I think the biggest problem in this country is not FEMA. I think it's people's ignorance of their own government and the lack of civics.
I agree. Yeah, people need to, I agree with it. Well, look, it's not FEMA, it's who runs FEMA. It's the forces behind this power.
They can use any kind of government job to mess with people's lives. The government can use the IRS to destroy you.
Exactly.
They can use the military.
It's just one more
CIA.
tool in their box. He's
on target.
I agree. Go read the executive orders.
Dude, we may be strung out on watching sitcoms and Wheel of Fortune and drinking beer, but the American people would get their act together and kick some ass.
They are.
If the government
Liberals
tries to do
and
that.
conservatives are coming together like I've never seen them come together, because people are worried about this. And more of what Congress does, more and more of the checks and balances are being removed in the name of dealing with the crisis. Now, I want the Speaker of the House and Leader of the Senate to be involved in the continuity of government program. They've gone public. They were very upset about it. But we got a problem here when the Speaker of the House, a Republican, and the Leader of the Senate, a Democrat, are both.
We keep talking about like how FEMA is going to take over the government and stuff. I'm just wondering exactly how will they do that? You haven't quite explained that yet.
Again, it's by incrementalism. They're not going to announce they're taking over. Incrementally, they've been doing it, and by using disasters, especially terrorist attacks, it would be quite easy to expand the power to condition the people to accept that level of tyranny. So it's through crises, through problem, reaction, solution, that we would see an expanded takeover.
But how? How are they going to do it?
Well, it's a Richter scale of martial law, of tyranny. I'd say we're at about 5 or 6 right now, and the mercury's rising.
Again, John Ashcroft, you're talking about taking away civil liberties bit by little bit by little bit. And I think a lot of my Democratic friends are a bit too hysterical about what's gone down. But,
well, again, I'm not a Democrat, but
I see no evidence of any of this. I see no evidence of any of that.
Of what?
Yeah, what evidence is
Okay.
I mean,
USA Patriot Act.
Now a threat overseas could end up being a threat to the homeland. And in order to protect the homeland, these good people have got to be able to share information. Those who criticize the Patriot Act must listen to those folks on the front line of defending America. The Patriot Act defends our liberty, is what it does, under the Constitution of the United States.
They'll swear up and down a bill is going to give you more freedom, and it's actually giving you a lot less. They'll have a bill that's supposed to give you more privacy, and what they're doing is they're turning over your information to the government.
In the Patriot Act, Section 802 says that all crimes are an act of terrorism, and now it's in the news. They're using it to go after strip bar owners, county commissioners who might have taken a payoff for zoning rules, zit-faced kids who were found with a bag of marijuana. They're charging thousands of people under the Patriot Act that have no connection in any way to acts of terrorism. They can talk all day about how the Patriot Act is for evil Arab terrorists. They're going to kill us any minute if we don't submit to the nice men in black ski masks. But we've all seen evidence. Mike Wallace calmly argues with somebody who's complaining about his limo driver double parked, and he's savagely arrested by the taxi police. We've got a woman in D.C. walking on to a subway station, and the police tell her, hey, you can't eat a candy bar on the subway. She says, okay, pops it into her mouth. They arrest her and say that she was chewing aggressively. This was actually in the Associated Press. Right here in Austin, Texas, this Pakistani guy with no criminal record, his family lives here in Austin, came to town. He videotaped the Capitol and the governor's mansion, and it was a national alert, on Fox. It's all over. The Pakistanis are videotaping. Well, every time I'm a tourist visiting family, I videotape things. It turned out the guy wasn't a threat. But this is used to boost the terror alert and to scare everybody. So we have the precedent being set. You eat a candy bar wrong. You argue with the taxi police about where you're parked, you get arrested. All of this. What does this have to do with America and freedom? Bottom line, look at the climate around you. We're all being treated like slaves by those who, in truth, are the terrorists. You see, that's the common sense. Who stands to gain from this threat? Who stands to gain from the threat of terrorism? The military-industrial complex.
That Congress, a few weeks ago, before it left on recess, by a 3-to-1 margin, passed an amendment that effectively struck down the sneak and peek section of the bill, which gives government the right to go into somebody's house without a warrant, without announcing, in effect, that you're doing a search, which, according to our Bill of Rights, people have to be notified. And so I'm moving forward to strike down all those sections which effectively knock out the Bill of Rights. We're going to reclaim the Bill of Rights by canceling the Patriot Act.
Key provisions of the Patriot Act are set to expire next year. The terrorist threat.
And let me tell you something. These people have said, Rand Corporation and others have said, the entire economy will be prisons, police in black ski masks, a Nazi Germany-like nightmare. It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up to talk about it, to read what's in Patriot Act 1 and 2, to see what Homeland Security does, Victory Act 1 and 2. We have got to get the word out now. We have got to warn everybody, because this military-industrial complex and their PNAC and their NORTHCOM plans state that they will carry out the terror, that they will engineer the crises so that they can offer their solution. Will it take another terrorist attack to get Victory Act and Patriot Act 2 passed?
That's a heck of a question to have to answer, but they'll be ready. If there is another attack, they're going to be ready. But right now, I think that they cannot get it passed because they're sort of on the defensive because of this magnificent vote we had to repeal some of the Patriot Act.
One day after the Patriot Act was passed, the world got to see a copy of it because no member of Congress was allowed to read it. It was transmitted from the Justice Department, much of it written, they admitted, years before, to the Congress. It was passed while the Capitol building was under anthrax attack. 5 of the 6 office buildings were shut down. About 60 to 70% of the Capitol itself was shut down. There were federal protective forces literally running around with Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine guns, wearing black ski masks and Nazi Kurzel helmets inside of the structure. It was a federal takeover. Turns out the anthrax, all the evidence shows, was sent under order of the White House to the Capitol to create the smoke screen so they could pass this legislation. Bush, of course, and his entire cabinet were on Cipro, the anthrax-fighting antibiotic.
There should be a campaign to throw this administration out for violating constitutional principles which have been the basis of this nation's civic dialogue and legal protection for over 200 years. And so that's where the energy should go. I'm doing everything I can as a member of Congress to raise the awareness of this issue. And frankly, all over this country, you've had over 100 cities pass resolutions that have condemned the Patriot Act. And it's a bipartisan effort, I might add. It's just that members of this administration, in their desire to create fear and control, have rushed headlong into this challenge to our basic liberties. I think the way that you ultimately solve it is to get rid of the administration which doesn't respect the Bill of Rights.
We're making good progress in the defense of America. We've got a Department of Homeland Security that now enables people to better coordinate and cooperate and share information. We got a Patriot Act, which needs to be renewed, by the way, that and strengthened, in my judgment, that is really important to allow the Criminal Division and the Intelligence Division of the FBI to share information, which they could not do before. But the Patriot Act helps. It helps us to be able to connect the dots, as they common phrase here in Washington.
These provisions of the Patriot Act are important to national security. and for this country to begin to forget that national security requires a robust capacity for law enforcement would be a major tragedy.
The good news is that right in my hometown of Austin, Texas, we just threw out the Patriot Act. It's over 400 cities. It's over 400 cities. It's not 170. It's not 250. It's over 400 cities and towns. Just to clear up any confusion, we have shot this film over the last, well, actually year plus. And so you'll hear us talk about 100 cities, 150, 300 cities. The news is usually 4 or 5 months behind, but the latest news reports are reporting 300 plus cities have thrown out the Patriot Act in their towns, and 4 states. Now, 8 months ago it was over 400 cities because I've actually counted them all up. But let's be conservative. 300 plus have thrown out the Patriot Act in 4 states. And that's very, very exciting because all we're saying is, hey, America isn't America if we don't have these basic liberties. And that's why you should throw out the Patriot Act and reaffirm the Bill of Rights in your town.
Alex Jones and several folks have tried or will be donating time to Mr. Jones, but our rules are they have to be present to do so. Sean Lausen. Is Sean Lausen here? Eliza Giles? Eliza?
Mayor, I had about 20 that we can...
Denise Keeper Lausen. Carlos Tame. Okay, Carlos, okay. How about Mark Wallace? Well, so far that's only 6 of the 5 people that attempted, Mr. Jones, to give you 3 minutes. Only 2 are here, so you have 6 additional minutes. I'll give you 9, well, unless somebody else...
Mayor, I can go outside and get people. I think folks kind of got, I mean...
Are you signed up to speak? What's your name? Trevor Holly? Okay, I need one more person. What's your name, ma'am? Rebecca, I'm sorry, what's the last name? Okay. Okay, so Mr. Jones, you're now at your maximum of 15 minutes. I just will say, folks, occasionally you'll see myself or council members leaving the dais. I promise you when we're back in the back, there's a television and audio we can hear and see.
Oh, yes, Mayor, I believe you.
Don't be offended when I leave.
I'm not offended.
Welcome, Mr. Jones. You have 15 minutes.
Well, thank you. And I hope you do stay because this is important. And I want to thank the people that came here that are part of the Second American Revolution. We shall prevail. That is a guarantee. Because as the New World Order turns up the heat, they're going to form more resistance. The tighter they squeeze, the more people are going to have that light bulb go off above their head. Now, I believe this council is made up of good people, and I think it's great that Jackie Goodman, Mayor Pro Tem, has brought this forward. Let's go through the facts. And John Ashcroft and Lord Bush and their military-industrial complex owners who are setting up military dictatorship, I mean, this is admitted, PNAC documents, cannot hide the reality of what's happening. In fact, Ashcroft, 6 months ago, really committed a federal crime. In sworn testimony before the House and Senate, he said there is no new terrorism legislation. It's not been introduced. The Domestic Security Enhancement Act, the Justice Domestic Security Enhancement Act, House and Senate versions. It's like if I got up here and said the sun didn't come up this morning. You'd laughed at me, but the press didn't call him on it. Now he's saying there is a Patriot Act 2 and Victory Act 1 and Victory Act 2, and you better pass all of them. You know what's in Patriot Act 2, Section 501? You fit the description of a terrorist under Section 802 of the first Patriot Act. You can be arrested, secretly executed. That's right, a 3 military judge panel. Now what is Section 802 of the first Patriot Act? It passed on October 27, 2001 at 5 in the morning when no one was allowed to read it, according to members of Congress. The definition of terrorist is any action that endangers human life that is a violation of any federal or state law. They have many other definitions about anything that influences government. Go read it for yourself. They're counting on you not reading it. They're counting on you not finding it. Ron Paul and others have pointed out that Hitler and Stalin and people didn't have the nerve to put stuff like this down on paper. They just did it. That's what's so amazing about this. And to see the assistant U.S. attorney here peddling this is really sad, but I know it's under orders. because 2 months ago it was reported that Ashcroft met out in Hollywood with the heads, the big editors of all the newspapers, and the heads of law enforcement, and said, we'd like you to go out and write editorials, editors, we'd like U.S. attorneys, assistant attorneys, write editorials, get on talk shows, get out there and sell that this is the people, this is good, this is a wonderful thing. So I want the council, in case you don't know this, and the people here today to understand that it's a stage-managed event. I mean, it really was hatched in a smoky room to oppress you, to manipulate you, to con you. Now that makes me very angry, and that's why it's so exciting that this council may simply just say we have a Bill of Rights and Constitution, and we will not violate the Bill of Rights and Constitution, and in this city, America is still America. I mean, it's just that simple.
The very first thing the Patriot Act does is allows the FBI and the CIA and Department of Justice and other agencies to cooperate with each other and share information so that we can make sure we can spot, identify terrorists, and hopefully prevent terrorism.
Why have 300 House members then rejected it?
But in the middle of our conversation, activist Alex Jones called the assistant attorney a liar.
Section 802 affects all citizens. It's for all crimes. It's for one marijuana cigarette. These guys haven't read it. Have you read it, reporters? Can you respect this guy all for a second? No, you know how this stuff works. Guys are not going to sit here and hear this guy spew lies. See, this is, they don't want to talk to me. You need to answer real questions. You need to answer real questions instead of lying. You know, earlier I talked to you, you know what's in Section 802. You know.
Can you guys your title again?
There's one thing that's for sure, if you don't get involved, you'll never make a difference. But by getting involved, I believe we still can make a difference. Now is not the time for us to give up on our political system.
Like, they have the law and the government and everything on their side. And I think there has to be a shift on our side as far as making them accountable for their actions.
So putting ourselves against the machinery and saying no. Civil disobedience.
Basically, you know, and that's, you know, supposedly what this country is all about, right? Civil disobedience, you know, sometimes it's necessary, you know, in a society to question, rise, and hopefully change things.
The pyramid, you know, the power is derived from the feds. It's a rampant executive mindlessness. The federal police and military entities looking to just completely erode our civil liberties on the base. But at the bottom of the pyramid, that's where the strength is. And as long as people become aware of these situations and begin to move in very kind of distinct and rational ways, there's no reason that you can't create a SWAT watch in your town. We need to preempt their ability to preempt our right to protest, to have have our grievances redressed, and and in order to exercise our freedom. There is an inherent contradiction between democracy and militarism, and whether or not we are left, right, or center, everyone should be concerned that the increasing level of violence on the grassroots. So I would suggest that people just get educated around these issues and take hope and fight back.
There is but one special interest that we should be working for, and that would solve just about all of our problems, and that is our liberty.
In 2004, in November, there's going to be an election and there's going to be an outcome. Now, for people who want to say, well, we don't have confidence in the system, we don't have confidence that our votes are going to be counted, that's all the more reason to participate more heavily
and investigate. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know the future, but we've studied human history. And regardless of who wins the November election in 2004, the New World Order wins. Whether it's George Walker Bush or John Forbes Hines Kerry, the establishment wins. And that's the message we try to get across to you. It's important for all of us at a grassroots level to get involved and cause a renaissance, an awakening to this fact. It's so important to realize that we need to go down to the basic foundations of freedom and liberty and get past the label or the name on the politician. Bottom line, are you freer today than you were a year ago? And unfortunately, the answer is no. We don't know who's going to win this election, but we do know they all serve the New World Order and need to be resisted. So stop letting them use this tag team, fake professional wrestling theater on you and wake up to the real world. Break on through to the other side.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And, you know, it'll take time to restore chaos and order, but order out of chaos, but we will.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. That was talking here in Malibu, outside L.A. to, well, Gary Busey, been in over 100 films.
107.
107, and how many incredible awards? That just
doesn't matter. The awards don't matter. The notches on the gun butt doesn't matter. What matters is right now. N-O-W, and the word now stands for no other way.